Can we start with a run-of-the-mill, just basic question that I think allows us to talk about two very important teams in the most dumbed-down, lower common denominator way? Are y'all cool with that?
I'm cool with anything you want to do.
Okay, Alabama or Georgia? Who you got?
Bama.
Bama?
Yeah, because I think Georgia's ceiling is actually theoretically higher because I think they might have a really historic all-time defense.
Yeah.
But they didn't have to throw it all today, like at all.
No.
And they played the game you have to play when you play Arkansas, which is just be patient because Arkansas doesn't want to allow explosive plays, and they were able to be patient. They had tremendous field position pretty much all day because Arkansas's offense couldn't do anything. It may not be 2020 as far as you need to score 50, but you do need to score. And credit to Georgia, they did score today. If they lined up and play tomorrow, I would take Alabama. I do think Georgia's ceiling is higher, though. If they get their guys back and if they click, I think there's a higher ceiling there.
Georgia's going to be number one on my ballot this week, but I think I'd pick Alabama to beat it.
Is that coaching? Because
I think they have the better QB. I think it's so often that's what it comes down to these days.
Okay. Georgia on performance, Alabama on potential is where based on what we've seen, only looking at 2021, I think that Georgia, based on the opponents it's faced and the way it is executed with the tasks at hand, is more impressive than Alabama, which I know that Alabama doesn't need to be 100% Alabama all of the time. Nick Saban demands that Alabama be 100% of Alabama all the time, which is why Nick Saban's never happy with Alabama. But kind of feel like Georgia, there have been some bumps along the way, but not many. It feels like there's been a far smoother path to being undefeated and being in the conversation as one of the best teams in the country on a day, and in a season where we are talking about those top two teams. And the reason I wanted to start basic is because they both had two of the biggest games in the entire country, two top 12 matchups, Alabama taking care of Ole Miss, Georgia taking care of Arkansas, 37-0 for Georgia, a 42-21 win for Alabama. Alabama won by less, but Georgia was more impressive. I think that your only argument for Alabama being better is that you believe that they have this either coaching, quarterback, or sort of just intangible potential advantage. Or, Tom, like you mentioned, if they had to play tomorrow, I would pick Alabama, in which case your bias is probably just years and years of Alabama, Georgia, and seeing what's happened before, right?
I mean, yeah, but I just think that when it comes down to it in that kind of a game, somebody's going to have to make a play on offense to win. And I just trust Alabama's offense more than I do Georgia's right now because, as we were saying, it's like I know Georgia's defense can stop anybody, and I know that they can run the ball on anybody. I'm not convinced they could throw the ball on anybody. I do think Alabama could win two ways between Brian Robinson at running back, Bryce Young, and those receivers. I think they could do it in the air. And defensively, they're not Georgia. But let's not overlook what they did today against Ole Miss compared to what Ole Miss did against them last year. Now, obviously, some of that's also being from Oxford and then moving the game to Tuscaloosa. But this is an Alabama defense that has improved from what we saw last season. So I think that they're kind of, in a way, I think offensively they're not as good as they were last year, but defensively they've picked up that slack.
Do you think that Herb Street was guessing, or do you think he talked to somebody in Tuscaloosa? Because I usually don't watch game day because I'm busy with the kid.
I'm watching soccer.
Who's Herb Street? I know need some context here for the audience that doesn't watch College Game Day.
He had something very.
Tell me, I do not know.
Well, he had something very specific, and normally, I think Kirk kind of like platitudes, and he was like, I expect Bama to drop 8 the whole game and just simplify everything like crazy and keep everything in front of them. And last year they were way too complex. So I wonder if somebody over there didn't tell him like, hey, we're not going to try to confuse Ole Miss or do anything. We're just going to try to see if they can execute consistently. And I do think they missed an Elijah Moore type. in
With
this
Jonathan
game.
Mingo out of the game, I mean,
Right.
that's a starting wide receiver. You're all of a sudden like right there eliminating a huge impact player from the passing game.
And it's not like Ole Miss's offense is that physical. It's extremely dynamic, but like if Bama doesn't have to really fear anybody one-on-one on the outside, the main thing you need to avoid doing is having coverage busts and run fit busts. And if you're playing drop 8, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of those busts. And they really was that a crock potting? Like
no,
technically? Okay.
kind of. But I think part of that too, like last year, they probably felt like they had to be a bit more complex because they didn't have the pass rush. Whereas I think this year, maybe they felt more comfortable just dropping everybody and saying, well, Will Anderson will beat somebody enough and put pressure on Matt Corral. We'll be able to get pressure on him that way. So I think that might have played a role in it too.
I love being friends with Bud and with everybody at 24/7 Sports and having them as a partner because you get names that pop into your brain and sort of rattle around for a little bit. With Alabama, it happens a lot. And then sometimes you don't always see those names flash, right? You've known them in your head. You've been waiting for it. And I think it was the 4th down stop when Tim Smith just shed a blocker and popped Ely like right in his tracks, a yard short of being able to get that first down on one of those 3 failed 4th down attempts from the first half. Tim Smith's another one of those names, right? When we've been talking about like Tim Smith, LeBron, I mean, but I don't want to.
I've got a good Tim Smith story.
Yeah.
So I first saw Tim Smith at the Nike, the opening camp. We used to call them Nike camps back in the day. I'm old. But I saw him. He was coming off his junior year. I really didn't know who he was. And I was like, this guy is huge. And I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, I used to be a baseball player. I was like, you did? Like, how many hundreds of pounds ago, Tim Smith? Because you're like 340. Anyway, I'm like, can you imagine? He was like, yeah, I was a left fielder. I said, okay. I really wonder when, like if anybody has the Tim Smith baseball footage out there, I really am curious about seeing this. Bama's nose guard. But with Will Anderson, that was such a fun guy to watch on tape. But he didn't really go to a bunch of like all-star stuff early in the cycle, and I didn't know how good he was relative to other elite kids. And then he finally showed up, obviously, for one of the major events and smoked everybody. And I was like, okay, yep, that get off that we see on tape is absolutely real. And that's kind of one of my challenges to Bama, right? How much better can Tim Smith and those guys get against the run before they get to the dome? Sort of the same way, like who of Georgia's receivers will become healthy? Will J.T. Daniels become healthy? Will they develop more passing game when they need it? Both these teams are freaky good and have the ability to get a whole lot better if they can improve in certain areas. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch because there were multiple games going on at the time and Alabama took that lead. So I kind of diverted attention from that game away in the second half. But from what I saw, I also feel like today was Henry ToTo's best day with Alabama by far. So to this point.
Well, he was flat bad against Florida, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that's encouraging to see there, obviously.